All right, everyone, welcome back to A Case of the Mondays podcast. It's Monday. I'm your host, Nick Williams, and we're going to kick Monday off right, this week off right, with getting into a couple really interesting stories. The first one I want to talk about is this one here. So we got a little bit different of a setup going on. So as you can see, if you're listening, then I'll run through a couple stories. I'll likely be keeping it more brief to test out the new type of content. I'll follow the user metrics to see if this is something you like. And if you want to reach out personally, you can go on and leave a comment on the YouTube on the video podcast. That's at DeepBridge Consulting Podcast on YouTube. So you can just search in DeepBridge Consulting on YouTube. You'll see our videos. So if you're watching, what I'll do is I'll display basically the content behind me, and I'll green screen over top, and then that way you can get a look the entire time at exactly what I'm talking about, looking at, highlighting, and then we'll keep it nice and simple like that. So these two stories it's gonna be basically a culmination of how technology is, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but how technology is changing marketing, and that was a little bit more focused on the negative and how it's impacting marketing and the effects. And about 24 hours later, we saw Uber lay off a bunch of marketing folks. So it's not something that you needed to be clairvoyant to predict, and unfortunately it's never good to see anyone get laid off ever in any industry, but especially in marketing, in this atmosphere in which you kind of have to adapt, and you need to grow skills. And that's the best thing about, when I started DeepBridge a year ago, the greatest thing, is a risk, but it's forced me to disrupt, and I can't compete with some of my major competitors in the market research and consumer behavior space. But what I can do is disrupt and do things in a way that no one's really ever seen before. So that's what I intend to keep doing. And these two stories hit home because they are definitely right in line with that. So both of these stories come from Marketing Dive, which is a great site to look for marketing content if you're someone who's into that. Obviously, DeepBridge is that as well, but I like to push other people as well, just to keep it objective. But we'll go into it, and I'll read through some of it. It's written by Peter Adams, and basically the executive summary is: global consumer products companies waste roughly $50 billion, or more than half of their collective investments in digital marketing and trade spending. And this was according to an Alex Partners study. The consultancy surveyed 1,100 executives across 6 markets who are or previously have managed digital transformation for their business. And this is no surprise, right? A lot of people have been talking about this. This is especially led by Mark Pritchard of my former employer at P&G. And, the outgoing Unilever boss has talked about this too, and we'll get into that in the next story. But essentially what this has come down to is a lot of people are starting to realize that, I don't know if you have Hulu, but what happens is these ad blocks, they're not reliable. And whether it's frequency is the problem, and if frequency is the problem, it's just downright fraudulent. But there's a lot of push in the industry, especially for brand safety. And so what this is coming down to is how do you actually disrupt something like that? And I think the answer that a lot of people are giving is just incorrect. So this is painting a negative picture, and the article goes on to quote Richard, Mark Pritchard, who said at CES, I would say that the days of advertising as we know it today are numbered. We need to start thinking of a world with no ads. Well, yes, of course, we need to think of a world with no ads, but it's not necessarily the ads that are the problem. It's how we are expecting to get value from those ads. If we always think of ads as, if we think of ads as just we deliver some content, and I always call ads basically the disruptor of their day. Like, if you're interrupting, ad space as we know it is an interruption. It's not coexisting, it's not co-creation, you're not working with the consumer. There's a way to do it in which your quote unquote, because what does advertisement mean? Your quote unquote advertisement, there's a way to include the consumer to make it more of an experience. An advertisement is really just an introduction. That's all it should be. If you've always viewed ads as an interruption rather than an introduction, you're going to have an issue. So, of course, when you see people say, we need to start thinking of a world with no ads. No, we don't. We need to start thinking of a world in which we change what an ad means. And that's the problem. And this article does a really good job of highlighting some of those things. And I really do think that the digital disruption that's on the horizon, it's going to be, I don't think it'll be in lockstep like tech normally disrupts things. Normally, when you get a new piece of tech, it's just massive disruption real quick. Because at that point, when tech's disrupting, it's basically a convenience thing. If something can be more convenient, everyone's going to do it. And everyone's adopting it, it's just going to disrupt quicker. But now we're on the verge of things like blockchain. I'm a big proponent. I'm going to start writing about it a lot. The site is launched. We're just cleaning up a couple things, debugging it with our with some users we given access to in a beta. But that'll be one of the main things I talk about, because blockchain is on. It's not even on the horizon. It's here, and depending on how long it takes you to get involved, you're gonna get left behind. But when you see things like this, where it's like, we need to start thinking of a world with we need to start thinking about how to connect with our consumer in a way that's not disrupting everything they're doing. And I really think that's what this story comes down to. So I'll read on. And the actual summary of this story, as you can see behind me, scoot over a little bit. Finding more effective means of improving digital marketing might be crucial as investments continue to ramp up and the consumer path to purchase becomes less linear amid the convergence of digital and physical spaces, per AlixPartners. That I couldn't agree more with. And especially the line about the consumer path to purchase becomes less linear. That is a mouthful, and there's a lot, not cryptic language, but there's a lot of language in there in which you need to really unpack what's being said. First of all, the call out of the path to purchase. That is something that maybe a lot of marketers will know about, but what does that actually mean to them? I think a lot of people, a lot of clients we talk to, big clients, think that the consumer just is introduced to their brand, service, whatever the case may be, and then they go and purchase. And it's like, well, how did they get introduced, right? Like, how long did they research? How many touch points did it take? Where were they most vulnerable? It's those little tiny questions that changes everything. And when you control things like, for instance, from blockchain, you can now start to incorporate the consumer. You can ask for their data. And I was reading some research, and I was writing my own, and I'm getting ready to run a study, and that's, I think, flipping the idea of marketing. Flipping the idea of marketing is the future. I really do think it is. I really do think exactly how I would engage in market research is exactly how marketing is going to behave with its consumers. And how I engage in market research, if I need information to collect info, basically everyone's going to they're going to become a market researcher. And what I mean by that is, if everyone, so how I do it is I pay someone to sit down, I'll collect some information. They just need to come with some honesty and candor and just a genuine sense of wanting to participate. And I'll pay them for their time. I think that's exactly what marketing is going to be, except we're going to replace time with data. So to get someone's data in order to market it, because that's exactly how you go to scale. Marketing at scale is based on data. If you don't have data, you can't play. So number one, you're going to have privacy concerns. Consumers are going to want to share information very privately. The blockchain does that. Number two, paying for things in a crypto fashion through the blockchain is going to absolutely be the future. Imagine a consumer, that's the consumer, they trust you, they vetted you, and they say, yeah, look, it's 30 cents. It's 30 cents for this. If you want my information for this email, if you want my information for me to hop on your newsletter, sure. Or it's an even trade. I'll get on your newsletter. I like you. If your newsletter provides value, we're good. But, is it too crazy to think that a consumer is going to charge someone 5 cents for their data? And that's exactly what we're not quite there, but that's exactly what we're going to do at DeepBridge Consulting. We're going to pay you to play. And incentivizing participation from the consumer is everything, because we are in an information war. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to take my advice. You don't have to do anything. But I'm telling you, the more information and correct information you can ethically get from your consumers, you're going to win, and the better off you'll be. And I'm not talking scraping the data. I'm talking about getting information from your consumer that they hand you knowingly, willingly, and for a purpose. The deeper you can go in these relationships, that's the future of marketing. So again, we go back to, a world with no ads. I don't agree. It's not a world with no ads. Ads as you know them, sure, that is dead. That's dead. And that's the problem. We're running to these digital, Facebook, brand safety, brand awareness, YouTube. It's not about brand awareness and brand safety. You need to figure out a more effective way to work with these platforms to have they have removed themselves. A lot of these CPG firms, a lot of giant, big firms have removed themselves from the process of, there's this middleman. They've removed themselves from that, and that channel is getting wider and wider and wider and wider till it's wider than this screen. So much so that we don't really know how, when I work with these big clients, they don't really know how to reach across the aisle and say, look, there's Jane likes this. And so they just keep hiring people out, they keep paying YouTube and Facebook, and it's like, you're not cultivating your ability and your skill set to bridge this gap. That's really what one-to-one personal marketing really comes down to, and that's not the future. That's here. And it's here to stay, and frankly, it's here to stay. So this whole world of buying 30 seconds or 15 seconds and look at how the world around us is changing, it's not necessarily that people are, I talked about this a lot, their attention spans aren't smaller. These platforms aren't like getting harder. It's not that. It's that people are realizing more and more they don't have to put up with that. And it's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound to be like, well, look, let's just remove. It's not that. You need to connect with the consumer in a way that makes sense to them, that incentivizes them, because that's what it's always been about. What is an ad really there to do? It's you're trying to get their attention and information. Well, then incentivize them to do so. It's not enough to say they'll buy my stuff. No, their time in 2019, time is almost, if not more valuable than the money, than the conversion. So in order to get them to participate, because now they know they don't have to, with cross-screen viewing up 76%, they don't have to. They'll just switch it off. They'll go to something new. Netflix, unfortunately, is going to have to pay the piper on this. They're going to have to start showing ads. And what do you do then? So that's really, this story is really interesting because it illuminates, I think, a fundamental problem that it's going to happen, right? Like the world as we know it in terms of digital marketing, quote unquote, is going to shift right from under everyone. And these big companies are not prepared. Actually, I've seen a couple stories about the Unilever. He's actually exiting, so I don't know. But the Unilever boss that's retiring actually talking about blockchain. This was in a world where people thought I was crazy for talking about it, but it's here. And I think, healthcare will be first, like most of the time with big data. Once healthcare does blockchain correctly, which I think it will be, I think that's also about two years away max. I think this is something that's here. And if you think about blockchain, if you think about what it is, and you think about the problems of digital marketing, there is no better answer. What's a better answer than safety, than scale, than incentivization, than control of the data? Blockchain is check. It does all of those things. So we'll talk about that in another episode. But I'll stop there because otherwise I'll go down the blockchain rabbit hole, and you don't want me to do that. So let's stop there on that. But it is a good switch up. So let's go over to the second article, which it's actually about Nike being able to purchase their prediction power. So I have a soft spot in my heart for predictive analytics. It was my first job with Nielsen Catalina, so shout out them over in Cincinnati. So it's really promising tech that Nike bought. So I'll read an excerpt from this, but the H1 header is Nike buys data analytics startup Select to boost DTC sales. So the direct-to-consumer sales is what DTC stands for. So the actual brief says Nike bought predictive analytics company Select to bolster its direct-to-consumer strategy of serving consumers personally at a global scale. So they're apparently a cloud-based platform which provides help to retailers optimize their inventories and hyperlocal demand predictions per company announcement. So their financial terms haven't really been disclosed or anything like that as it relates to Nike's buying them. But this is a really interesting move, and I think it's something that a lot of brands should follow suit. You see Nike's actually bought some bigger brands. Usually you see them buying brands and not capabilities, I'll call them. They bought Converse. They bought, what was that? It's not Billabong. It's Hurley. They bought Hurley. So they're buying brands, but now you see them buying capabilities. Now that should signal something. If you're a director of a big company, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone who's just interested in actual business conversations like this is something that should perk your ears up. Nike is doing this. Nike is buying the capabilities. Nike's not a tech company, but they're purchasing tech. That should tell you, if you're listening to me rant about blockchain about 10 minutes, and you hear that and go, that's not for me. Well, it is, because you see them buying these cloud-based companies who are focusing on predictive analytics. Where do you think predictive analytics is going? That's where that's going. And this was, I always, one of the main questions I get someone who's just having a casual, like, off-cuff conversation with me is like, well, sometimes I'll be online and someone will say, Nick, how do people know? Sometimes I don't even type it. Maybe, is my phone listening to me talk? I'm like, no, it seems like it is. But that's because the predictive analytics are so powerful that they know exactly what's next. And you essentially you have a hard time realizing what you said versus what you think. And when predictive analytics is really powerful, it gets right in between of what you're thinking, what you're perceiving, and what you're going to do next. And you can do that through a confluence of a number of data points. But that was my first job, which was trying to put together this, basically work with the algorithm to say, I'm going to formulate a customer profile that, based on 53 different data points, says this is what they're, this is a person who has a dog. And a person who has a dog is actually going to want to buy this Iams pet food. So we deliver this coupon to them. So the conversion rate on that coupon, it's on waste, and it's actually used, and it boosts the lifetime value and the loyalty and the sense of, wow, this platform actually understands me. The consumer really likes it. So that's the point of predictive analytics. And taking it a step further, Nike's actually going to use this technology to start to build out some of their DTC launches. So there's a trend in the sneaker community. They're called sneakerheads, and they work off launch strategies. And a launch strategy, essentially, in my opinion, it was just something I'm going to it's not for this podcast. It's a different kind of content. But you think of brands like, gosh, why can't I remember the name? Holy moly. It's in a picture right behind me. Supreme. You think of brands like Supreme. I got a painting up, and you think of brands like Supreme, and that's exactly through mystery, through launches, through DTC. It's not necessarily a DTC strategy, but they have a very deep connection with their fan base. Essentially, they're brands with fan bases. That's what you should really be going for, and I think Nike does a really good job with that, owning the sneakerhead movement. And now that they have these companies, they're buying these capabilities that can essentially tell them everything about their consumer, what they'll want to hear about when they do their new launch. But now that they have these capabilities, they're going to be really dangerous. And in terms of setting themselves up for the future, I think they're here to stay. And the article continues on and says, meanwhile, Nike's direct sales rose 12% on currency-neutral basis to $11.8 billion in fiscal 2019 to make up 32% of the total brand revenue. So far outpacing the 2% gain to wholesalers, which is incredible. The digital portion of Nike's direct sales grew 35% during the period to outpace all other marketing channels. That's incredible. 32% of brand revenue in 2019. That's incredible. And if you think people hear DTC and they think, oh, that's a one-off strategy. No, it's not. Not if you have the capabilities and resources to do it at scale. And again, that goes back to blockchain. I guarantee you, I don't know anything. Actually, I don't guarantee you. Let's say that. I have a very strong feeling that these sort of predictive algorithmic houses and shops have the ability to target people and to work with data in the blockchain. And if they can't, they will. I promise you that. So these are just two different stories and a little bit of my own personal feelings about the tech that, before we were a little bit more negative and cynical about it. But now it's like, look, if you could harness this and use it to your advantage, this is really going to set you up for the future. And I think if you're not considering it already, you need to. You really do need to start doing it. So that's it for Case of the Mondays. I want to keep it nice and short. I want to keep it tight and on these couple of stories. If you haven't checked it out, go to the YouTube channel at DeepBridge Consulting. You'll find us on YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe this, really, because honestly, at the end of the day, this is how the channel grows. We're not out here to try to sell. We're not out here to try to sell you a T-shirt or anything like that. I don't want your business. I just want your attention for now, and then we'll figure out the rest later and what really makes sense. But really, it's just sharing what interesting business can do for you, interesting business stories and what they can do for you, and then also what DeepBridge Consulting can help you to accomplish and how to achieve your goals and really smash through all your revenue goals and profit values and targets. So make sure to subscribe to this podcast, share it, and go to the YouTube channel and give it a listen if you can. And we will see you guys in the next one, but we'll be uploading a lot more content. So if you're listening and you're a listener and a long-time listener, haven't actually checked out our YouTube channel, please do so, because we're going to be doing a lot more content like this that you see on screen. And if you're listening, it's basically just a green screen over the story, and I'll be putting out a ton more content. So thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.